marijuana is an addictive drug which produces in its users insanity, criminality, and death. Marijuana is the most violence-causing drug in the history of mankind. If the hideous monster Frankenstein came face-to-face with the monster of marijuana, he dropped dead from fright.
You know, it's not easy countering 7 decades of propaganda in a 2-hour show, but let's try. It's time for the Russ Belville Show's Reefer Madness Debunked.
Welcome back, everybody. Half past, and normally we'd be speaking with Dr. Mitch Earlywine, but the doctor is out today. He had to have some dental work done, and he's still in pain and under the influence of Novocaine and other pain relievers. He said this would probably not be the best day. So we will let you get well soon, Dr. Mitch. And in the meantime, I'll take a look at what's going on in the state of Florida. I received this press release via Digital Journal, and the headline reads, "Families Briefed on the Dangers of Pot by Executive Director John Redmond." Now, John Redmond is the Executive Director of Californians for Drug-Free Youth and Director of Demand Reduction for California's high-intensity drug trafficking area. Other information, let's see about this. He's been rewarded for distinguished service from the Office of the National Drug Control Policy and was honored in 2008 and 2011 as the Citizen of the Year from the California Narcotics Officers Association, that bastion of scientific inquiry. So, John Redmond is going around in Florida trying to scare the hell out of Floridians over their vote for Amendment 2, which would legalize medical marijuana in the state. The polls currently are hovering around the 60% mark that it needs to pass. So any amount of fear and doubt they can sow is going to help them move that needle toward no. So, he gave a talk on his work experiences with legalized medical marijuana in California. Now, comparing California and Florida for their medical marijuana is a little bit of an apples and oranges comparison, in that California has famously started off with the most lax medical marijuana statute allowed in the country. Florida's would actually have a condition list and be a little better regulated than California. But what he brings up is that Floridians can expect pot shops everywhere. And the first line that he delivers here, per an NPR story in October of 2009, of all things, quote, "In some neighborhoods, there are more medical marijuana dispensaries than Starbucks." I want to just attack that little bit of reefer madness right off the bat. This common line, "There's more dispensaries than Starbucks." Oh my God! People can go get marijuana at more dispensaries than Starbucks. Yeah, but can people go get marijuana at more places than there are outlets for getting coffee? Another example of an apples to oranges comparison. They say, oh, more dispensaries than Starbucks. Oh my God. But yeah, but there's other coffee shops other than Starbucks. There's restaurants other than Starbucks. There's actual, rest areas where you can stop on the freeway and there'll be a nice group of elderly volunteers who will give you free coffee. There's nowhere near that many outlets to get marijuana. This scare is supposed to be, because we see Starbucks everywhere, we'll see marijuana dispensaries everywhere. And what is the problem with seeing a marijuana dispensary? Oh, look, there's a building that has security at the front of it that requires you to buzz into a door to gain entrance, where your identification for legal age is checked, where you're in a medical state with a medical card, your medical marijuana card is checked to see if it is valid. As it would be checked in Florida, you would have to be an adult. You would have to have a medical marijuana card, and you could go into this dispensary, which these dispensaries, by the way, usually don't have windows. You can't see the people inside. You can't see the product inside. So people are going into a secure private place where their ID and qualifications are checked, purchasing some marijuana, and then leaving. Why is this such a frightening prospect? See, they keep saying pot shops, as if what's going to get set up here is some sort of lounge, like a tavern for weed where people are going to go in and get their weed, start smoking it, and having a good old time. And that's not at all what Florida would allow, and that's not at all what dispensaries allow throughout the country. Dispensaries don't have on-site consumption, not in Oregon, not in any of the places like Colorado or New Mexico that have severely regulated these things. And that's what Amendment 2 gives the power for Florida regulators to do as well. But the scare story here is based on prejudice. It's based on bigotry. It's based on the idea that there'll be shops full of those people. Those people will be there. You'll see all the tie-dyes and the hippies and the stinky people and the pierce and the tattoos and those people. That's what it really has to do with. Especially when you read his next point, which he says an unregulated pot shop system that translates into thousands of shops opening at the beaches and throughout Florida neighborhoods, next to schools and churches, within easy walking distance of children. Why does that matter? There's a dispensary. There's 4 or 5 of them on Sandy Boulevard here in Portland, Oregon. If your kid came to Portland, your kid could fly in, catch the MAX train, the light rail, or catch a bus, get right down on Sandy Boulevard and be within easy walking distance. I know of a spot on Sandy where there's 2 pot shops within 4 blocks. One on 28th, one on 24th. Collective Awakenings on 28th, Treehouse Collective on 24th. Your kid, we could drop him off at 26th and Sandy, and he'd be in walking distance of 2 dispensaries and never be able to get into either of them. Now, he could also walk by that same 4-block stretch, a couple of bars that have some open patio dining where people are consuming beer and wine openly, and who sometimes, when they're done eating, drop off their check and leave it there on the outdoor table with all their half-finished beers and wine. Your kid might be able to get access to that, but he's not going to be able to get into those pot shops. Now, the scare story from Florida wouldn't be complete without a little bit more of the WotC. What about the children, WotC? Here's his quote. Oh, actually, this is a quote from Luis Colon, who's a father of 4 and the CEO of MGE Management Experts. MGE Management Experts training is based on the administrative technology of L. Ron Hubbard. The Scientology guy. So this is probably valid stuff, right? Luis Colon says, quote, even more frightening for parents is that Amendment 2 permits our children to be classified as qualifying patients, which comes with the constitutional right to obtain medical marijuana without their parents' consent or knowledge. In addition to no parental consent requirements, there are no age limits or limits on the amount of dope and edibles someone can get. This means our kids can get pot without our consent. It can be edible, so we'll never smell it, and we will never know if they don't tell us, we don't find their stash, or we don't catch them using. All right, before I get to the first part of that, let's tackle the second part. Your kids might be able to get a hold of pot. You'll never smell it because it's edible. You'll never know it if they don't tell you, or if you don't find their stash, or if you don't catch them using. So how big of a problem is your kids' marijuana use if you can't tell without catching them? How much of a problem is that, really? But as far as this kids being classified as qualifying patients, yeah, sure. Sure, if they can go to the doctor with their parents and get the qualification, they're going to be able to set up all sorts of regulations regarding how children will be able to qualify. There are kids with medical marijuana cards here in the state of Oregon. There's kids with medical marijuana cards in the state of Colorado. But we're usually talking about kids with epilepsy or cancer or something serious here. Why would we deny to someone an effective medicine just because they haven't reached age 18 yet? Oh, yes, because of our bigotry against cannabis. That's why. Mary Pickett from Harvard Medical School also spoke at this event in Tampa for the folks trying to scare everyone about Amendment 2. And she says, quote, "Health hazards are much greater for people who begin use before age 21 because the brain is still developing during the teen years. Evidence suggests that effects on the brain from marijuana use by adolescents and teens can be permanent," end quote. Well, gosh, we better not legalize for kids. See, this scare about the kids who use before age 21. If I'm looking at a kid who's got severe seizures, who's having 100 seizures a day, I got to ask myself, gosh, is the chance this kid might lose 8 points of IQ along the same lines of the kid losing all his or her mental faculties because of the seizures that happen all the time? Is the risk that a kid might become dependent on cannabis really something that's going to forego me saving the kid's life when the kid has epilepsy? Her article continues to discuss the other sorts of risks from marijuana, including addiction, withdrawal symptoms, gateway drug, abnormal brain development, schizophrenia, depression and anxiety, diminished lifetime achievement, motor vehicle accidents, and chronic bronchitis. Wow, you got the whole cornucopia there. Okay, so addiction, about the same level as coffee. Withdrawal symptoms, again, about the same level as quitting coffee. Gateway drug, debunked since 1999 by the Institute of Medicine. Abnormal brain development, perhaps if you're using chronically for years and years and years. Schizophrenia. We've seen no change in the rates of schizophrenia diagnoses for about a century, even as the rates of marijuana use have skyrocketed. And recent research shows that the genes responsible for contributing to schizophrenia may also be contributing to the want to use cannabis. It's not that cannabis causes schizophrenia, it's that schizophrenia leads people to cannabis. Depression and anxiety, people are treating their depression and anxiety through the use of cannabis. Diminished lifetime achievement. Well, sure, if you make someone's medicine illegal and you kick them out of